At my graduation dinner, Dad laughed. "You're old enough to pay rent or get out." The very next day, as I moved into my own new house, I told them I'd stop paying their bills. Their faces went ashen. My name is Sophia Wilson, and at 23, I had just graduated college with honors after years of relentless hard work. What should have been my proudest moment became a living nightmare at our celebratory dinner. My father clinked his glass, flashing that familiar smile I knew so well, and declared to the table, "Congratulations! But you are old enough to pay rent or get out." My mother nodded silently beside him. They had no inkling I'd been planning this exact moment for months, or that I already owned my own home. The expressions on their faces the following day would be worth every single penny I had saved. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're from. We appeared to be the quintessential middle-class American family. Our 4-bedroom house sat in a respectable neighborhood in Pennsylvania. My father, Robert, worked as a senior systems analyst at a tech company, while my mother, Diana, held a part-time position at the local library. My younger brother, Jake, and I never truly lacked anything. We enjoyed annual family vacations, typically to the beach, celebrated birthdays with lively parties, and Christmas mornings were always piled high with presents. From the outside, everything seemed utterly perfect. But when I turned 15, things began to unravel. Dad returned home one day, his face etched with strain. He'd been laid off. The company was downsizing, and despite his 15 years of dedicated service, he was among the first to be let go. Mom immediately picked up more hours at the library, but her income barely covered groceries, let alone our substantial mortgage. "It's just temporary," Dad assured us that evening at dinner. "I'll find something better very soon." That something better never materialized. Months dragged on, and the only jobs Dad could secure paid significantly less than his previous role. His pride took a monumental hit. I'd often hear him late at night, the computer screen's glow illuminating his frustrated face as he endlessly scrolled through job listings. Mom continued working longer hours, yet the financial strain remained glaringly evident. Bills began piling high on the kitchen counter. The once light-hearted atmosphere in our home slowly gave way to palpable tension and hushed arguments after Jake and I had gone to bed. By the time I turned 16, I understood I needed to contribute. I applied for a job at the local grocery store, bagging items after school and on weekends. My first paycheck amounted to just over $100, which I proudly handed to my mother. "Oh, honey, you should keep this for yourself," she said, but I clearly saw the profound relief in her eyes. "I want to help, Mom," I insisted. "We're family." What began as a genuine gesture of goodwill soon hardened into an expectation. When the electricity bill arrived with a past due notice, Dad looked pointedly at me. "Sophia, can you chip in this month, just until I get back on my feet?" I didn't mind at first. I picked up additional shifts at the grocery store and added a weekend job waiting tables at a local diner. My grades dipped slightly, but I still managed to maintain a solid B average despite working nearly 30 hours a week while attending high school. By my senior year, I was covering the cost of my own clothes, school supplies, and extracurricular activities, in addition to contributing approximately $300 a month to household expenses. Dad had eventually found a job paying about half his former salary, and Mom remained at the library, but somehow our financial situation never seemed to truly improve. What I didn't realize then was that Dad had developed a serious gambling habit. He would stop at the casino on his commute home from work, utterly convinced he could win back everything we had lost. Mom later confessed she knew, but felt utterly powerless to stop him. Each time he'd promise it was his last, only to return to the slot machines and poker tables within days. Jake, meanwhile, never seemed to register our financial struggles. 3 years my junior, he was completely shielded from the harsh reality of our situation. While I worked grueling double shifts, he played video games and socialized with friends. When he desired the newest gaming console for Christmas, somehow the funds always appeared. When I needed new shoes for my jobs, I purchased them myself. "Your brother is still young," Mom would offer when I highlighted the disparity. "Let him enjoy his childhood." So I complied. I worked, I studied, and I helped keep our household afloat. I observed as my father grew increasingly reliant on my income, not as a temporary solution, but as a permanent remedy for his failures. I witnessed my mother accept this new normal without question, and I noticed how they both treated me differently. Then Jake, burdening me with adult responsibilities while granting him the freedoms of a teenager. When college acceptance letters arrived, I had numerous options thanks to my strong academics and extracurriculars. But the full scholarship to our local state university simplified the decision. I simply couldn't abandon my family financially, even though a part of me desperately longed to escape. "You were always the responsible one," Dad remarked when I announced my choice. What he truly meant was, "You were always the one we could count on for money." I moved into a campus dorm but returned home every weekend to work my various jobs. I consistently sent money for bills and called daily to check on them. I remained the dependable daughter while watching my friends embrace the full college experience. Party invitations were routinely declined in favor of extra shifts. Spring break trips were utterly out of the question when the property tax bill came due. Throughout it all, I convinced myself it was temporary. Once I graduated and secured a good job, things would undoubtedly improve. Once Dad regained his footing, I could finally focus on my own life. Once our family finances stabilized, I could begin saving for my own future. But deep down, I was slowly grasping an uncomfortable truth: nothing was going to change unless I changed it. College was supposed to be my gateway to freedom, but instead it became yet another obligation to meticulously balance. My typical Monday commenced at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd wake, shower quickly, and review notes from my 8 a.m. business ethics class while eating a protein bar. After class, I'd rush to my part-time campus job at the admissions office. Working from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., then it was off to afternoon classes until 5, a quick dinner, and then studying until midnight. Tuesdays and Thursdays followed a similar pattern, with different classes but the same relentless, hectic pace. Weekends offered no respite. I'd drive home Friday evening and head directly to the diner for the dinner shift. Saturdays meant a double shift at the grocery store, and Sundays were split between the diner brunch shift and laundry before I'd drive back to campus. My roommate, Elaine, would often just be starting her weekend as I was ending mine. "You know this isn't normal, right?" Elaine stated one Sunday evening as I stumbled back into our dorm room, utterly exhausted from my shift and dreading Monday morning classes. "Most college students aren't paying their parents' bills." I shrugged. "They need the help. But do they really?" She pressed. "Your dad has a job. Your mom works. Your brother is old enough to work part-time too. Why is it all on you?" Her questions made me profoundly uncomfortable because I had no valid answers. The truth was, I had never genuinely questioned the arrangement. It had evolved so gradually, from simply helping out during a crisis to becoming the family's sole financial safety net. Before I knew it, I was consistently paying the electric bill, the internet bill, and often the entire grocery bill too. "The internet is getting shut off," my mother would text. "Can you send $200 for the bill? Dad's car needs repairs. Can you help with the $500 mechanic bill? We're a little short on the mortgage this month. Can you contribute $800 each?" Request arrived with the unspoken expectation that I would comply, and I always did. I would meticulously scrape together my earnings, eat ramen for a week, and dutifully send the money home. The gratitude expressed would quickly dissipate, promptly replaced by the next urgent financial need. During my sophomore year, the requests intensified. I was now regularly sending nearly 70% of my earnings home. My own personal expenses were reduced to an absolute bare minimum. I bought used textbooks, wore the same clothes for years, and never ate out unless I was working a shift at the diner and received a free meal. It was during this period that Elaine staged what she dramatically called an intervention.
"This
has to stop," she asserted, sitting me down one evening. "You are literally killing yourself working while your family takes advantage of you." "They are not taking advantage," I feebly protested. "They need help. Then why isn't your brother helping? Why did your dad just buy a new television? Why did your mom post about their weekend getaway on social media?" I had absolutely no answers. The new television had appeared in our living room the very same week I had sent money for what my father termed essential bills. The weekend getaway had transpired after I contributed to what my mother described as a desperate situation with the water heater. You need to start saving for yourself, Elaine firmly insisted. Open a separate account they don't know about. Put something away each month, even if it's just $20, something that is just for your future. That night, I opened a new savings account at a completely different bank. I set up direct deposit for 20% of my earnings to go directly into that account before I could be tempted to send it home. It wasn't much at first, just $50 a week, but it was something that was unequivocally mine alone. As my junior year commenced, I connected with a financial advisor named Harriet through a campus workshop. Harriet reviewed my situation with genuine concern. You have taken on an adult burden while you are still establishing yourself, she observed. This pattern will continue as long as you allow it. With Harriet's expert guidance, I began to rigorously educate myself about personal finance. I absorbed knowledge about budgeting, investing, and the crucial importance of establishing financial boundaries. Together, we crafted a plan for gradually decreasing my family contributions while simultaneously building my own secure safety net. Your first loyalty has to be to yourself, Harriet repeatedly reminded me. You cannot genuinely help others if you are drowning. By my senior year, my separate savings account had swelled to a respectable sum. I had also secured a highly desirable, high-paying internship with a marketing firm that recognized and valued my tireless work ethic, offering me a full-time position upon graduation. For the very first time, I could clearly envision a future that was not solely defined by my family's relentless needs. It was during this pivotal period that I made a life-altering decision. With Harriet's continued assistance, I began searching for starter homes in a modest yet rapidly developing neighborhood approximately 20 minutes from campus. Housing prices were remarkably reasonable, and with my accumulated savings, an excellent credit score cultivated from years of meticulous financial management, and my new job offer, I easily qualified for a mortgage. I found a charming, small, two-bedroom house with a small yard and a welcoming front porch. It required some cosmetic updates, but was structurally sound. The price fell well within my budget, especially considering how much I had been contributing to my parents' household. All these years. 3 months before graduation, I secretly closed on the house. Only Elaine and Harriet were privy to my plan. I deliberately arranged for the closing to occur during spring break, telling my family I was working extra shifts. I signed the papers with trembling hands, simultaneously terrified and profoundly exhilarated by my boldness. This is the first day of your independent life, Harriet declared, witnessing my signature on the mortgage documents. I kept the house empty for those 3 months, occasionally visiting to sit on the floor of what would soon be my living room, visualizing where furniture would go and how I would decorate once I could truly afford it. But mostly, I prepared myself mentally for the inevitable confrontation that would erupt when my family discovered I was severing financial ties. Graduation rapidly approached, and with it, a reckoning I both dreaded and desperately needed. Graduation day dawned bright and beautifully clear. I put on my cap and gown in the dorm room I had shared with Elaine for 4 transformative years, my emotions a tumultuous blend of pride, anxiety, and anticipation. Today is about celebrating you, Elaine gently reminded me as she helped adjust my cap. Try to enjoy it no matter what happens later. The ceremony itself was held on the university's sprawling main lawn. Rows of folding chairs facing a stage vibrantly decorated in the school colors. As I took my designated place among my fellow graduates, my eyes scanned the crowd for my family. They were easy to spot, my mother waving enthusiastically while my father casually checked his phone. Jake looked utterly bored, clearly attending under duress. When my name was finally called, I strode across the stage with my head held high. Sophia Wilson, Bachelor of Business Administration, summa cum laude, the dean announced. I accepted my diploma with a firm handshake, turning to offer a wide smile to the audience. In that precise moment, looking out at the vast sea of faces, I felt an exhilarating surge of accomplishment that no one could diminish. This achievement was entirely mine alone. After the ceremony concluded, my parents located me among the throngs of graduates. Mom embraced me tightly while Dad clapped me on the shoulder. "We're so proud," Mom said, her eyes genuinely warm. 4 years gone just like that, Dad added. "Time to join the real world now." Jake offered a perfunctory hug. "Can we go eat?" "I'm starving." My parents had made reservations at Castellanos, a mid-range Italian restaurant conveniently near campus. Not the most upscale establishment in town, but certainly a step up from our typical dining choices. As we were seated, Dad theatrically informed the waiter, "We're celebrating our daughter's graduation today." "Congratulations," the waiter replied with a genuine smile. "First round of drinks is on me." Dad promptly ordered an expensive bottle of wine for the table. Mom selected one of the pricier pasta dishes. Jake chose a steak that cost nearly $30. I, however, opted for a simple chicken parmesan, already mentally calculating how much this celebration would ultimately cost me because, despite Dad's grand announcement about treating me, I knew precisely who would be paying the bill. Throughout the appetizers, the conversation remained superficially light. Mom inquired about my fellow graduates. Dad asked about the ceremony speakers, and Jake griped about having to sit in the sun for 3 hours. No one asked about my future, job plans, or what came next. It was as if my graduation marked an end, rather than a profound new beginning. As our main courses arrived, Dad cleared his throat and raised his wine glass. "A toast to our graduates, Sophia. We cannot express how proud we are of what you have accomplished." I smiled and raised my glass, allowing myself a brief moment of genuine connection. "You have always been responsible," Dad continued, "always thinking of the family first. That is a rare quality these days, when so many young people only think of themselves." Mom nodded in solemn agreement, her eyes visibly misty. "But," Dad said, his tone subtly shifting, "graduation marks a significant transition to full adulthood. And with adulthood comes adult responsibilities." My stomach clenched. I knew exactly what was coming. "Your mother and I have thoroughly discussed it, and we think it's time you started contributing more formally to the household expenses." I nearly choked on my wine. "More formally," I sputtered. "Dad, I've been paying bills since I was 16. He waved his hand dismissively. Yes, you've helped out here and there, but now that you'll have a real job, it's time for a more structured arrangement." "Here and there," I repeated, incredulous. "I paid the entire electric bill last month and the internet and half the mortgage. That's all in the past," Dad stated firmly. "We're talking about the future. You're old enough now to pay rent or get out." The restaurant noise seemed to fade away as I simply stared at my father. His expression was utterly matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather rather than delivering an egregious ultimatum that completely ignored years of my dedicated financial support. "We think $800 a month is fair," he continued, unabated. "Plus continuing to help with utilities, of course. You'll be making good money now, and this will still be cheaper than getting your own place." Jake snickered. "Welcome to adult life, sis." I glanced at my mother, desperately hoping for some recognition of the sheer absurdity of this demand. But she was studiously examining her pasta, avoiding my gaze. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the profound anger building inside me. "After supporting this family financially through high school and college, working multiple jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, you now want me to pay you $800 a month in rent, plus utilities?" "Don't be dramatic, Sophia," Dad retorted. "We've supported you your entire life. Put a roof over your head, food on the table. Now it's time for you to do your part." I wanted to scream. I longed to enumerate every single dollar I had contributed over the past 7 arduous years. I wanted to throw the expensive wine in his arrogant face and walk out. Instead, I took a deep, fortifying breath and said, "I'll think about it." That seemed to completely satisfy him. The conversation immediately shifted to Jake's summer plans, which apparently involved a road trip with friends that my parents were generously helping fund. I sat in silence, idly pushing my chicken around the plate, my appetite utterly gone. When the bill arrived, the waiter placed it in front of my father with a smile. Again, congratulations to the graduate. Dad looked at the bill, then slid it pointedly across the table to me with a knowing wink. Consider this your first adult expense, $178. I placed my credit card on the bill without a single comment, deliberately ignoring Jake's smug smirk. And my mother's uncomfortable, averted glance. The drive home was shrouded in silence. I stared out the window, mentally tallying how much money I had given my family over the years and how much I still had left in my secret account. By the time we pulled into the driveway, I had made my resolute decision. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of my new life, whether they were ready for it or not. Sleep utterly eluded me that night. I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that had adorned it since I was 10. The conversation at dinner replayed in my mind on an endless, maddening loop. The casual dismissal of my years of contribution, the undeniable entitlement in my father's voice, the profound silence from my mother, the smug look on Jake's face. 6 months earlier, I had sat across from Harriet in her small office, nervously twisting a tissue in my hands. I need to make a change, I had confessed to her. But I'm terrified of what it will do to my family. Harriet had looked at me with deep compassion, yet her voice was firm. Sophia, we have meticulously reviewed your finances together for over a year now. Do you know what I see? I shook my head. I see someone who has contributed over $30,000 to her family's expenses, while simultaneously taking on student debt and working herself to absolute exhaustion. I see parents who have come to expect this support as their inherent due. And I see a pattern that will continue indefinitely unless you decisively break it. She then pulled out a folder containing the exhaustive documentation we had painstakingly compiled together. Bank statements detailing transfers to my parents, receipts for bills paid, a meticulous spreadsheet tracking every single contribution. Your starting salary at Meridian Marketing will be $60,000 annually. If you continue supporting your family at current levels, you will essentially give them approximately $24,000 each year. That's 40% of your income. When she presented it that way, the entire situation seemed even more outrageously absurd. You have saved diligently despite these demands, Harriet continued. You have $15,000 in your separate account. That is more than enough for a down payment on a modest home in several neighborhoods we have discussed. That very day we had meticulously mapped out a comprehensive plan. I would continue my contributions until graduation to avoid any immediate conflict. Meanwhile, I would discreetly work with a realtor to locate a suitable property, close before graduation, and move immediately thereafter. Bernard, the realtor Harriet had highly recommended, proved instrumental in finding my charming little house on Maple Street. He understood my strict budget constraints and my tight timeline. We viewed dozens of properties before we finally discovered the right one, a 1950s bungalow with sturdy bones but outdated decor. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a compact kitchen, and a surprisingly spacious living room featuring a cozy fireplace. The owners are motivated sellers, Bernard had explained. They've already relocated to Arizona and simply want to close quickly. The asking price was $175,000. With my impeccable credit score and substantial savings, plus a first-time home buyer program that Bernard helped me navigate, I secured a mortgage with payments actually less than what my father was demanding. In rent, the closing had been nerve-wracking. I had taken a day off from classes, telling my parents I had an incredibly important exam to study for. Instead, I had sat at a table with a group of strangers, signing document after document until my hand ached. When the final paper was signed, Bernard had handed me the keys with a broad smile. Congratulations, homeowner. Now, lying in my childhood bedroom for what I knew with certainty would be the very last time, I felt a peculiar blend of sadness and profound resolution. This house held countless memories, not all of them negative, but it also unequivocally represented a dynamic that had grown increasingly toxic. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I quietly rose and began meticulously packing my belongings. I was surprised by how little I actually owned, despite having resided here for most of my life. My clothes fit neatly into 2 suitcases. My books and personal items filled 3 modest boxes. My jewelry, mostly inexpensive pieces I had purchased myself, fit into a small pouch. By 7:30, I had everything neatly stacked by my bedroom door. I could hear movement in the kitchen, my mother's familiar footsteps, and the comforting gurgle of the coffee maker.
Taking a deep breath, I carried the first suitcase downstairs.
Mom looked up from the kitchen table, surprise etching her face. "You're up early. Want some coffee?" "No thanks, Mom," I replied, setting the suitcase by the front door. "I'm moving out today." Her coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What? Because of what your father said, honey? He didn't mean you have to leave immediately." "I know," I responded, retrieving the suitcase. "But I've been planning this for a while. It's time." She followed me as I went back upstairs for the second suitcase. "But where will you go? Do you have an apartment lined up? You can't just leave without a plan." I smiled despite myself. She genuinely had no conception that I was capable of making significant plans without their knowledge or input. "I have a place," I stated simply, adding the second suitcase to the first. By now, the commotion had roused my father. He appeared in the hallway, hair disheveled, robe hastily tied. "What is going on?" he demanded. "Sophia says she's moving out," Mom explained, wringing her hands nervously. Dad looked at the suitcases, then at me, his expression rapidly shifting from confusion to outright anger. "Because of last night, for God's sake. We were just having a conversation about adult responsibilities. There's no need for dramatics." "This is not about last night," I clarified, returning upstairs for my boxes. "This has been my plan for months. I'm starting my new job on Monday, and I need to be settled in my new place before then." "New place?" Dad followed me up the stairs. "What new place? You can't afford a place of your own yet. You need to build up savings first." The profound irony of him lecturing me about savings when he had systematically depleted mine for years was almost comical. "My new place is all taken care of," I asserted, lifting a box of books. "I've been saving and planning for this." "Saving?" Dad's voice rose sharply. "How could you be saving when you've been helping us with expenses?" I didn't answer, focusing instead on carrying my belongings downstairs. Mom was now sitting on the bottom step, looking utterly lost. Jake had emerged from his room, watching the scene unfold with unusual attentiveness. "The moving company will be here at 9 o'clock, I announced, checking my watch. "I just need to get everything downstairs before they arrive."
Moving company? Mom's voice was barely a faint whisper.
"Sophia, this is all so sudden." It was not sudden to me. It was the culmination of years of growing awareness and months of meticulous planning. But I understood that to them, it truly seemed to materialize out of nowhere. They had simply never considered that I might possess a life entirely separate from their needs. "You'll still help with the bills, right?" Dad asked, his anger slowly giving way to a more pressing concern. "Even if you're not living here?" And there it was. Not a flicker of worry about my well-being or sadness at my departure, but an immediate, palpable concern about how my decision would impact their finances. "No," I stated, the single word feeling like both a betrayal and a profound liberation. "I will not be paying your bills anymore." The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face flushed a deep crimson. My mother's eyes brimmed with unshed tears. Jake looked from them to me, finally seeming to grasp the true dynamics at play. "You can't just abandon your family," Dad sputtered eventually. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied calmly. I'm simply starting my own life. You always said that was what you wanted for me." The moving truck arrived precisely at 9. 2 men efficiently loaded my meager belongings. I did a final sweep of my room, meticulously checking drawers and closets for anything forgotten. As I turned to leave, I noticed my mother standing in the doorway, looking smaller somehow. "I didn't realize how little you have," she said softly. After all these years, it was the closest she had ever come to acknowledging the profound imbalance that had defined our entire relationship. I hugged her briefly, then headed downstairs where my father was already vociferously arguing with the movers about their packing position. "Dad," I interrupted, "I'm leaving now." I'll call you in a few days when I'm settled. He turned to me, his expression a complex, shifting mix of anger and disbelief. This is how you repay us for everything we've done for you. By running away the moment we ask you to contribute? The sheer unfairness of his statement struck me like a physical blow. But instead of engaging in an argument, I simply handed him a plain envelope. "What is this?" he asked, suspicious. "A copy of my new address in case of emergency," I replied. "And a record of the financial contributions I have made to this household over the past 7 years. I thought you might want to review it before we talk again." Then I walked out the door, climbed into my car, and followed the moving truck to my new home and my new beginning. The moving truck pulled up in front of my house at 9:04 in the morning. My house, the phrase still felt wonderfully strange in my mind. The modest bungalow, with its faded blue paint and crisp white trim, looked exactly as I remembered from my previous visits, but now it was undeniably mine. I parked behind the truck and sat for a moment, simply taking in the sight. The small front yard clearly needed attention. The grass was overgrown, and a few stubborn weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete path. The porch had a slight sag on one side, and the gutters could certainly use cleaning. Yet the bones were good, and it was mine. Every single imperfection represented a step toward freedom. The movers, Tim and Carlos, efficiently unloaded my few possessions. When all the boxes and suitcases were neatly stacked in the living room, Tim handed me the clipboard to sign. "That's it?" he asked, looking around the nearly empty space. "Nothing else coming?" "No," I replied, a small smile forming. "Just starting out." Carlos nodded approvingly. "Best way to do it. No clutter, fresh beginning." After they departed, I stood alone in the center of my empty living room, overwhelmed by the profound silence and expansive space. I had furniture being delivered later that day, the bare essentials. I had ordered online the previous week: a bed, a couch, a small dining table with 2 chairs. It wasn't much, but it was a solid start. The rest of the morning was spent diligently unpacking my clothes and personal items. I had prudently bought cleaning supplies earlier in the week and stored them in the kitchen cabinet, so I took some time to wipe down counters and sweep floors. The house had been professionally cleaned before closing, but it had sat empty for several weeks, allowing dust to accumulate. Around noon, a gentle knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find an older woman with silver hair and remarkably bright eyes standing on my porch. "Hello there," she said warmly. "I'm Doris Abernathy from next door. I saw the moving truck earlier and wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." She held out a ceramic dish covered with foil, just a simple casserole. Moving day is exhausting, and everyone needs to eat. I accepted the dish with genuine gratitude. "Thank you so much. I'm Sophia Wilson. I just graduated college, and this is my first house," Doris beamed. "How wonderful, a young homeowner. That's not something you see every day anymore." We chatted for a few minutes, Doris kindly filling me in on the neighborhood, the charming couple across the street who had lived there for 30 years. The young family 2 doors down with twins who had just started kindergarten, the best day for trash collection, and which local grocery store offered the freshest produce. "If you need anything at all, you just come knock," she said as she prepared to leave. "Oh, and the previous owners left some perennial bulbs in the garden. They'll come up next spring, beautiful tulips and daffodils." After Doris left, I felt significantly less alone. The idea that flowers planted by previous owners would bloom in my garden next year gave me a strange sense of continuity, a tangible connection to the history of this place that was now undeniably mine. The furniture delivery arrived promptly. At 3 p.m., 2 men efficiently assembled my bed frame and skillfully positioned the couch and dining table according to my specific instructions. By 5 o'clock, I had the semblance of a true home. The bed was made with new sheets and a cozy comforter I had ordered online. The couch faced the small fireplace, inviting warmth. The dining table sat perfectly in the sunny corner of the kitchen. That first night alone in my house was a peculiar blend of terrifying and exhilarating. Every creak and subtle shift of the old building made me jump. The shadows seemed different from those in my childhood home, and the street noises were utterly unfamiliar. But underlying the nervousness was a profound, deeply satisfying sense of accomplishment. I had done this. I had painstakingly created this opportunity for myself, despite years of financial drainage and insidious emotional manipulation. I slept fitfully that first night, waking several times to the unfamiliar surroundings. By morning, however, I felt noticeably more settled. I made coffee in the gleaming new coffee maker I had finally treated myself to and sat at my little table, calmly planning my day. Monday would be my inaugural day at Meridian Marketing, but I had the entire weekend to continue organizing my nascent new home. Sunday evening, my phone began vibrating incessantly with texts from my family. I had deliberately kept my phone off for most of the weekend, needing crucial space to process the enormous changes in my life. Now the outside world was intruding. Mom, hope you are settled in. Please let us know you are okay. Dad, the internet bill is due Tuesday. Will you be sending money? Jake, Dad is freaking out about bills. What did you do? I responded only to my mother, assuring her I was fine and settled in my new place. To the others I maintained a resolute silence. It was far harder than I had anticipated. Years of ingrained conditioning had taught me to respond immediately to financial requests, to prioritize their needs above my own comfort or plans. Breaking that deeply ingrained pattern felt almost physically painful. Monday arrived, and with it, my very first day as a marketing coordinator at Meridian. The day passed in a whirlwind of new faces, extensive orientation sessions, and endless paperwork. By the time I returned to my little blue house, I was utterly exhausted but undeniably exhilarated. This was the true beginning of my career, my independent life. Tuesday brought even more texts from my father, each increasingly urgent. Dad, the electricity bill is past due. They are threatening to shut it off. Dad, did you get my message? About the internet bill? It's important for Jake's schoolwork. Dad, Sophia, you cannot just ignore your family responsibilities. Wednesday, my mother called during my lunch break, her voice tight with palpable worry. Honey, I know you are establishing your independence, and I truly respect that, but your father is very stressed about the bills. Could you just help us out one more time while we figure things out? Mom, I said gently. I have been helping out one more time for 7 years. Dad needs to figure out how to manage the household budget without my income. But the electricity might be shut off tomorrow, she said, her voice trembling. And the internet already has been. Jake has a paper due. The guilt was immediate and absolutely overwhelming. I almost caved right then. Almost offered to pay the bill just this once. But Harriet's voice echoed powerfully in my mind. This pattern will continue as long as you allow it. I'm sorry. Mom, I said, my resolve hardening. I can't help anymore. Dad has a job? You have a job? The two of you need to figure this out. Thursday evening, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my entire family standing on my porch. Dad looked visibly angry. Mom, anxious. Jake, deeply uncomfortable. This is where you live now? Dad asked without preamble, peering past me into the house. You bought a house? Yes, I replied, deliberately blocking the doorway. Would you like to come in? They filed past me into the small living room. Dad immediately began scrutinizing everything, checking the fireplace, examining the ceiling, opening doors to inspect other rooms. Mom sat cautiously on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Jake wandered into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator without even asking, "How did you afford this?" Dad demanded, his voice laced with suspicion. "Where did the money come from?" "I saved," I said simply. "And I qualified for a first-time homebuyer program." "Saved from what?" His voice rose sharply. "You gave us every spare penny." "Not every penny," I corrected, my voice steady. "I set aside a portion of my earnings for my future. I've been doing it for years, so you lied to us?" he accused, his voice thick with indignation. "All those times you said you were broke, that you couldn't help more with the bills, you were hiding money?" Several of my new neighbors were out in their yards, feigning disinterest but clearly watching the unfolding confrontation on my porch. Doris had even come out to water her flowers, her concerned gaze flickering towards us occasionally. I never lied, I stated firmly. I contributed thousands of dollars to your household. I worked multiple jobs through high school and college to help support the family. But I also protected myself because no one else was going to. We are your parents, Mom interjected weakly. We have always protected you. Have you? I asked, looking directly into her eyes. Or have you protected Dad and his poor financial choices at my expense? Her gaze immediately dropped to her hands. The electric company shut off the power this afternoon, Dad said, his anger momentarily giving way to genuine desperation. The house is dark. The food in the refrigerator will spoil. Is that what you want? Of course not, I replied, my voice softening slightly. But I want you to understand that it is not my responsibility to fix this. It never should have been. Jake had returned from his inspection of my kitchen. So what? You're just going to let us suffer because you're mad about paying rent? That's cold, Sophia. This is not about rent, I said, my own frustration finally building. This is about 7 years of supporting this family while being treated like a personal ATM. This is about Dad's gambling and Mom's enabling. And you never having to contribute a dime while I worked myself to exhaustion. The word gambling hung heavily in the air. Jake looked at Dad in confusion. Mom's eyes welled with tears. You don't know what you're talking about. Dad blustered, but the fight was clearly leaving his voice. I think I do, I replied calmly. And I think it's time we all acknowledge the reality of our family dynamic. How dare you accuse me of gambling? My father said, his voice dangerously low, attempting to regain control. After everything we've done for you, Dad, please, I interjected, trying to keep my tone even. Let's be honest with each other for once. I know about the casino visits. I know about the online poker accounts. I know about the loans. His face paled slightly, but he stubbornly maintained his defensive posture. Everyone needs recreation. A few games here and there are not gambling. Mom was staring intently at the floor, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Jake looked utterly confused, his eyes darting from Dad to me and back again. What is she talking about? He asked Mom. Dad doesn't gamble. The ensuing silence was answer enough. Jake's expression shifted from confusion to stark disbelief. Is that true? He pressed, turning to Dad. Is that why we're always broke, even though you and Mom both work and Sophia has been paying bills? Your sister is exaggerating, Dad insisted weakly. And regardless, our financial situation is none of your concern. What matters now is that your sister has abandoned her family obligations and left us in a desperate situation. I walked to my new dining table where my laptop sat open, revealing a detailed spreadsheet I had created with Harriet's assistance. I think we need to look at some facts. I turned the screen so they could all clearly see it. This is a record of every financial contribution I have made to our household since I was 16 years old. Every bill payment, every grocery purchase, every direct deposit to your account. The spreadsheet was meticulously organized, complete with dates, precise amounts, and clear descriptions of each transaction. 7 years of unwavering financial support laid out starkly in black and white. The total at the bottom is $87,342, I stated, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. That is how much I have contributed to our family while working minimum wage jobs and attending school full-time. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad's face flushed an even deeper red. Even I was shocked seeing the number in its entirety. Somehow, adding it all up made the situation even more starkly apparent than I had previously realized. That cannot be right, Dad muttered, leaning closer to scrutinize the figures. You're making this up. I have receipts and bank statements for every single entry, I countered. This is not an estimate. This is the exact amount I have given to support our family, while you gambled away your paycheck and Mom pretended not to notice. Mom let out a heartbroken sob, covering her face with her trembling hands. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. He kept saying it was the last time that he would win it all back. That's what adicts always say, I said gently. But it is never the last time, without real help. Jake had moved closer to look at the spreadsheet, his expression hardening visibly as he scrolled through the entries. You paid for my graduation party? He asked, pointing to an entry from the previous year. Dad said he saved up for it. I paid for a lot of things that were supposedly from Dad, I confirmed. Birthday gifts, Christmas presents, car repairs. I paid you back. For some of those, Dad protested weakly. Some, I agreed. A very small fraction. Jake turned to our parents, anger now undeniably evident on his face. Why was Sophia paying for everything? Why did neither of you ever tell me what was really going on? We wanted to protect you, Mom said, finally looking up, her eyes pleading. We didn't want you to worry about adult problems. So instead, you let Sophia carry everything. Jake's voice rose, incredulous. She's only 3 years older than me. She was still a kid, too. His unexpected defense of me was both startling and deeply touching. For years, I had quietly resented his carefree existence while I struggled under the immense weight of family obligations. Now I realized he had been as completely in the dark as I had been. The point is, Dad interjected loudly, attempting to regain some semblance of control over the conversation. We are in crisis now. The electricity is off. We need help. I closed the laptop and resolutely faced my family. I am willing to help, but not by simply giving you money. That approach hasn't worked for 7 years and it won't work now. What does that mean? Dad asked suspiciously. It means I will help you develop a realistic budget based on your actual income. It means Dad needs to get professional help for his gambling addiction. It means Mom needs to stop enabling destructive behaviors. And it means Jake might need to get a part-time job to contribute, just like I did at his age. Gambling addiction is a strong term, Dad mumbled, avoiding my gaze. Is it? I challenged. How much have you lost in the past year alone? How many times have you promised to stop? How many bills have gone unpaid because the money went to gambling instead? He had no answer. I own this house outright, I stated, the declaration causing all 3 of them to stare at me in stunned shock. No mortgage. I saved enough for a substantial down payment, and the first-time home buyer program covered the rest, based on my income and credit score. That's impossible, Dad said, but his voice lacked any true conviction. Not impossible when you've been saving since you were 16 and recently received a signing bonus from your new employer, I replied calmly. Not impossible when you've been learning about financial planning instead of looking for the next quick win. The undeniable reality of my independence was finally sinking in. My father's face had shifted from crimson to a stark pale. The full, profound implications were becoming terrifyingly clear. I would not be returning to rescue them. I would not be sending money. The personal ATM they had relied on for years was permanently closed. So that's it? Dad asked, a note of desperation now creeping into his voice. You're just cutting us off completely? I am giving you a choice, I clarified, my voice unwavering. Option 1. I help you create a sustainable financial plan. Dad seeks professional treatment for his gambling addiction. Mom takes a more active and informed role in household finances, and Jake contributes through part-time work. We rebuild our relationship on healthier, more equitable terms. And option 2? Mom asked quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Option 2 is that you continue as you have been, but without my financial support. You figure it out on your own. That's not much of a choice, Dad muttered bitterly. More choice than I had at 16, I replied evenly. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions. Years of simmering resentment, manipulative patterns, and misplaced responsibilities hung palpably between us. Finally, Jake spoke up, his voice firm. I want option 1. And I already applied for a job at the grocery store where Sophia used to work. Mom looked at him in surprise, then at me. I want option 1 too. I should have been stronger years ago. I'm sorry, Sophia. All eyes turned to Dad. He stood rigidly, his wounded pride warring fiercely with desperate necessity on his face. You really own this house? He asked again, almost pleading. I nodded. And we might lose ours if things don't change, he acknowledged reluctantly. The second mortgage you took out last year without telling Mom is catching up to you. Up to you, I said, my tone revealing that I knew even more than they thought. Mom gasped. Second mortgage, Robert? You said that was a small personal loan. Dad's shoulders slumped. The facade he had so meticulously maintained finally crumbled completely. I will try option one, he said, his voice barely audible. But I don't have a problem. I can stop any time. That is the very first thing we will need to address, I stated firmly. You cannot solve a problem you will not acknowledge. As they prepared to leave, the stark reality of their situation visibly weighed heavily on them. No electricity at home. Mounting bills, long-held secrets brutally exposed. The dynamic had shifted irreversibly. We will talk tomorrow about next steps, I said as they stood on my porch. For tonight, you can stay at the Comfort Inn on 4th Street. I will call and pay for one night while you figure things out. It was the only financial assistance I was willing to offer, a temporary buffer to ease the transition, rather than a regression to old, destructive patterns. As their car pulled away from my house, I felt a complex mix of emotions, lingering. Guilt for their predicament, deep anger at years of exploitation, and a burgeoning hope that genuine change might actually be possible. But most of all, I felt an overwhelming sense of profound liberation. The truth was finally laid bare, and with it came the undeniable possibility of healing. 3 months after that monumental confrontation on my porch, life had dramatically changed for all of us. My little blue house had become truly mine, filled with personal touches that made it feel like a real home. I had painted the living room a warm cream color, hung inviting curtains in the bedrooms, and planted vibrant flowers in the front yard with helpful advice from Doris. Each small change, no matter how minor, powerfully represented my burgeoning independence and growing sense of self. At work, I was absolutely thriving. My position at Meridian Marketing challenged me in ways school never had, and my supervisors had already recognized my strong work ethic and keen organizational skills. A small promotion had come after just 2 months, along with the added responsibility of managing our social media accounts. The stability of a regular paycheck that was entirely mine alone felt like an incredible luxury. After years of immediately dividing my earnings among various family needs, the relationship with my family had evolved into something I truly could not have imagined on that tense graduation night. It hadn't been easy, and there had certainly been setbacks, but progress was undeniable. Dad had initially resisted the idea of attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings, stubbornly insisting he could control his habit without external help. It took the mortgage company sending a formal notice of foreclosure proceedings to finally shatter his denial. The night he received that devastating letter, he called me in tears, something I had never witnessed before. I don't want to lose our home, he had choked out, his voice breaking. I don't want to lose my family. Please help me. The very next day, I drove him to his first gay meeting. He had faithfully gone 3 times a week since then. The process was incredibly difficult for him, demanding a level of honesty and vulnerability that did not come naturally after years of entrenched deception. But seeing him diligently work through the 12-step program, acknowledging the profound harm his addiction had caused, filled me with a powerful hope that real, lasting change was truly possible. Mom had found full-time work as an office manager at a local dental practice, effectively doubling her previous income from the library. The job seemed to grant her not just financial security, but a newfound confidence I had never seen in her before. She had also started attending support groups specifically for families of gambling addicts, learning how her enabling behavior had inadvertently contributed to the problem. I thought I was protecting everyone by keeping the peace, she told me over coffee one Sunday afternoon. But I was just making it possible for the situation to continue. I failed you, Sophia. I let you carry burdens that were never yours to bear. Her heartfelt acknowledgement of my experience was healing in ways I had not even expected. For years I had felt largely invisible in my own family, valued only for what I could provide financially. Having my mother see me, truly see me, was an immeasurable gift. Jake had surprised everyone with his remarkable response to the family crisis. He had secured a part-time job at the grocery store and consistently contributed his earnings to the household expenses. More importantly, he had stepped up emotionally, often mediating between our parents when tensions inevitably rose during heated financial discussions. "I never realized how much you did for us," he had told me one evening when he visited my house. "I was so caught up in my own life that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. I'm sorry for being such a self-centered jerk." His heartfelt apology meant more than he could possibly know. The deep-seated resentment I had carried toward him for years began to finally dissolve, replaced by a genuine fondness for the responsible young man he was rapidly becoming. As for me, the most significant transformation was internal. The constant gnawing anxiety about money that had been my unwelcome companion since adolescence was gradually, thankfully, subsiding. I was learning to spend on myself without crippling guilt, to save for my future without pervasive fear, and to confidently establish boundaries without apology. Part of that growth included venturing into dating for the first time in years. Between demanding work and overwhelming family obligations, romantic relationships had seemed an impossible luxury throughout college. Now I was seeing Vincent, a talented graphic designer I had met at work. Our relationship was still new, but his unwavering respect for my independence and his empathetic understanding of my family history made him incredibly easy to be with. My cherished friendship with Elaine had deepened as well. She had been absolutely right all along about my family dynamic, and her unwavering support had been utterly crucial during the difficult transition. We met weekly for dinner, alternating between her apartment and my house, sharing candid stories and offering invaluable advice as we navigated the complexities of early adulthood together. The family's financial situation had stabilized somewhat. With Dad's gambling finally under control, Mom's new, better-paying job, and Jake's consistent contribution, they had successfully negotiated with the mortgage company and managed to keep the house. They were now operating on a strict budget that I had helped them create, but did not fund. Sometimes they slipped up, and occasionally Dad would hint about needing help with an unexpected expense, but I maintained my boundaries with gentle, yet firm resolve. "I can help you figure out how to handle that within your budget," I would offer instead of money. "Or we can look at what expenses might be reduced this month to cover it." It was not always easy. Years of deeply ingrained conditioning had trained me to rescue them at any cost to myself. Sometimes the guilt was overwhelming, especially when Mom mentioned having to cancel small luxuries, or when Jake talked about delaying his college plans to work more hours. But I constantly reminded myself that true help meant supporting their independence, not fostering debilitating dependence. One Sunday evening, almost precisely 3 months after our intense confrontation, my family came to my house for dinner. It was our nascent new tradition, a weekly meal together that powerfully symbolized our evolving relationship. I had prepared a simple but deliciously comforting meal, and we sat around my small dining table, the conversation flowing more easily and genuinely than it had in years. "I have some news," Dad announced as we finished dessert. "I've been offered a position at Anderson Technology. It's not management level like my old job, but the salary is better than what I'm making now, and there's room for advancement." "That's wonderful," Mom exclaimed, genuine pride radiating from her voice. "Congratulations, Dad," I added, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "You deserve this opportunity." He squeezed back, his eyes suspiciously bright. "I couldn't have done it without all of you, especially you, Sophia. Your tough love saved this family, even when we fought against it." His heartfelt acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. For so long, I had wanted nothing more than for my parents to truly see me, to value me for more than just my financial contribution. This simple, profound recognition felt like the closing of one arduous chapter and the hopeful beginning of another. As they prepared to leave that evening, Mom hugged me tightly. "I am so proud of the woman you have become," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You taught us all what real strength looks like." Standing on my porch, watching their car drive away, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in years. The journey had been undeniably painful, the confrontations difficult, and the changes profoundly challenging. But through it all, I had discovered my own inherent worth beyond what I could provide for others. I had learned that true family supports each other's growth, rather than exploiting each other's weaknesses. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop rescuing them, and instead stand beside them as they bravely learn to rescue themselves. Life was not perfect. My family still struggled at times. I still battled old habits of over-responsibility, but we were all actively growing, healing, and building something healthier together. And that, I realized, was worth every difficult conversation, every painful boundary, and every brave step toward enduring change. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.